Kelton Brooks here with the Hutchinson News, sports editor with the Hutchinson News. Today I have a special guest with me. That is Darrell, the Hutchinson president of the NAACP. First of all, Darrell, I just want to thank you for braving through this frigid winter that we have going on, this beautiful ice storm that we have. So thank you for coming through today.
Certainly appreciate it. Glad to do it. Enjoy it. And it is a little frigid out there, but it's nice and toasty in here, so right. It makes it all worthwhile.
So as the Hutchinson president of the NAACP, most people might not know some of your day-to-day duties. What are some of those?
Well, basically what I do is I'm retired now, and so we have an office, and I go to the office about between 1 and 1:30 in the afternoon, Monday through Friday, and stay till about 4 o'clock. And what we do is we have people that call in, for various reasons. Most of the time they're calling in about a complaint of some kind. And what I'll do I get my phone messages and review the complaints and talk to various people. We have, we interact with the school system, and we interact with the police department and some of those kinds of places. And so if sometimes I'll come in and talk to them, and we'll talk about an issue or a complaint and see if we can't find some way to get the parties together and get it resolved. But on a day-to-day basis, that's normally what I do. Like today, for instance, when I got in the office today, I had 2 calls waiting for me, one from Gulfport, Mississippi,
okay,
that had a complaint with someone that's a relative up here that's having an issue in Emporia, Kansas, and the other one was from Houston, Texas.
Okay.
It has an issue in Topeka, Kansas. And so, we're listed, in the phone book, or we're listed, on the directory. And so when they find somebody that's having a problem, that's close to the area that your unit is in, well, they'll call that branch. And so that's why I get calls sometime from people who are out of state, but they have someone that's got an issue here that's located close.
When someone does have a complaint, I guess, how can they fill those complaints out, or how can they reach you or contact you?
Well, basically they call and they'll refer them to our office. And then what I do is I tell them that we don't take complaints over the telephone. They have to fill out a formal complaint. And normally sometimes we end up mailing them to them, or sometimes they'll have occasion to be in this area and just come by personally and fill it out.
Okay. And of course, this is the month of February. It's Black History Month. And one of the reasons why I wanted to bring this up, I know I shared this over the phone with you before. I have a brother back at home. He's not my blood brother, but can't no one tell me he's not my brother. His name is Trevor McClure, and he has this brand that goes on. It's called 28 Days Ain't Enough.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the messages that he's trying to, I guess, relay is simply that title. It's not enough. And one of the things that we have coming up, of course, in August is Emancipation Day. And then, of course, I know Black History Month, there are some things and some programs that have been taking place. But beyond February, I feel like there should be more of, an African-American presence in Hutchinson, because we should be represented. I mean, we also live in this city as well. So for you, I guess, what are some things that have been going on for Black History Month, and things that can be done just to show more African-American representation in Hutchinson?
Well, during Black History Month, the NAACP has what we call a Charlotte Menace, Tell Us About It, poster contest. And what we do is we work with USD 308 with grades 1 through 6.
Okay.
And those children from the various grades and various schools, they'll find a person that in a category of arts or science or athletics or education or medicine, whatever the case might be, and they'll select that person. And, excuse me, and they will, for instance, like Dr. Drew that did blood plasma, they'll say this young man will, 6th grader the other day was saying, I'm Dr. Drew, and this is what I did, and this is a contribution I made, and goes ahead to explain about the blood plasma, etc. And after all of these kids, make their presentation and present their posters, we have a panel of judges that determine, how well their stage presence, how well they made their presentation, how well they demonstrated based on their poster, who it was they were representing. And then they grade them, we have 1st, 2nd, and 3rd prize. And those kids are given gift certificates, for $25, $35, and $50, 1st, 2nd, and 3rd in each grade category. And so it's pretty neat. You see a lot of talent. We have kids that portrayed Michelle Obama. We have portraying the athletes, Steph Curry, and so it's just a variety of folks that they. But it's always interesting and a lot of fun because, and then they bring out things that that people don't know. That some of those are well-known people, but then there's others that they bring up that people never heard about before. And the gentleman that invented the stoplight and those kinds of things, Okay.
So again, we have Darrell in at the Hutchinson News today, the Hutchinson president the NAACP. Also, for the second part of that question, I guess what can be done, or is there something that can be done to show more African American presence and representation in the city?
Well, I think that one of the things that we need to do is that I think information, when you get information out there and where people can have access to it, it's easier for them to find out what's going on and become a part of it. And I think a lot of times that the way that information is disseminated, we're limited to a certain extent. And for instance, you probably won't want to hear this, but a lot of times, a lot of people get their information from word of mouth or something like that rather than subscribing to a paper or maybe listening to a local radio station. And so I think that if we make more and more information accessible through various mediums, and I think that will help get people involved. And another thing, to be quite frank with you, a lot of times if there's things going on in the community and you haven't been conditioned, for the lack of a better word, to participate or be included or involved, or you have a tendency not to pay any attention to it or kind of ignore it,
Right.
And I think that's one of the problems that we have here, because I've told people before, a lot of people, naturally when they know that I'm connected with the NAACP, we'll have conversations, especially with Caucasian folks who don't want to talk about why people do this or don't do that or do the other. And I'll say, well, I think that we have to make the same effort in including people and letting them know they're welcome and invited as we did kind of ignoring them and, and overlooking them. And I think that has a lot to do with participation in various activities and visibility as far as African Americans are concerned in our community.
And one of the things to solve that is the event that's coming up Tuesday. That's the Hudson Harmony. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Well, the Hudson Harmony is a group of young ladies that have been working in conjunction with the Hutchinson Human Relations Commission, and what they're going to do is have what they call community conversations. Okay. It's going to be a conversation about race, and of course the Human Relations Commission has been one of those agencies that's been in place for quite a while, but it's kind of been, in my opinion, dormant in terms of addressing the issues, as far as human relations are concerned. And so that was a subject that we talked about a few months ago, and this is where they've arrived at how to address that and have kind of what you call a town hall meeting.
Right.
And they're going to invite folks in, and they're going to have this discussion and talk about various ways that we can address the issue of race, and hopefully, methods to overcome it and to try to be a more unified community.
What do you feel like is some of the main issues that needs to be fleshed out and detailed more at that event?
Well, I think, some of the main issues, I think, to me, that with the NAACP, our concerns is we have a list of interests and concerns, but we try to prioritize what we think are important, And one is that we believe in quality education. We believe in fair employment opportunities. We believe also in housing opportunities, and of course criminal justice. And kind of in that order, we kind of prioritize education, because our belief is if you get a good quality education, well, you're preparing yourself, or you're capable of going out and getting those other things you need: a job, a quality job, and buying a home, and that sort of thing, educating your children and raising your family. And so one of the things that I think happens is a lack of jobs sometimes. I don't think we have, that the employment here is not really as available to some members of the community as it is for others. Quality employment, Right. And so that's a concern we have, of course. And then we have in education, we talk about maybe there's disparity in the way that in discipline, we have sometimes a double standard of discipline and that sort of thing. And so we feel like at any time that when kids are formidable in their young, formidable age, from in grade school and so forth like that, if they don't get a good solid foundation, well, sometimes that's kind of programming them for failure, and they don't really get an opportunity to, to feel good about themselves to the point that they'll really, put themselves into education and really grasp everything that's available to them, because they get kind of turned off because of some kind of a negative, experience that they've had.
And I guess one of the things I want to point out that you just mentioned, you meant the disparity in discipline. Do you mean in the judicial system or court system here in Hutchinson? Is that what you mean?
Well, I mean a disparity as far as school is concerned. Okay. Like, for instance, I had a situation here just not long ago where we had a couple of young ladies that were going to high school, and they got into a confrontation that ended up being a shoving match, a physical thing. And the African American, there were two. One was Caucasian, one was African American. And the one that was African American, she was relegated, she was expelled, and then ended up in an alternative school, while the other girl stayed in school with an in-school suspension, see. And so what I'm saying is that, and after investigating and so forth, we found out that if he was going to find fault, it was equally, it was equal on both sides, And so I feel like that's an example of having, being overzealous when it comes to discipline, because if one was entitled in school suspension, why not the other one?
Right.
And but that's kind of an example. Or have one expelled and one one that gets to stay in school, one that gets expelled, and then they end up not dropping out and not coming back at all because of that experience. So when I talk about discipline, and a lot of times something that you do, like for instance, if Johnny comes to school and he's in a bad mood, they say, well, Johnny got up on the wrong side of the bed, Right. He's in a bad mood, but if you come and do something, well, he's violent, and he's prone to be, violent, and he's dangerous, and we got to get rid of him. We got to get him out of here. He's a threat, see. So we experience those kind of things. I mean, it's hard if people don't want to acknowledge it, but that happens. That has happened more than once.
Right. And that happens on a number of different occasions. I know it's one thing we can point out, because I know you mentioned a lot of stereotypes, and that one of those stereotypes can be brought up with the latest shooting that we've had that happened in Parkland, and that's with the different details that happen about how a white student can have these different headlines, and I honestly conflict with that in certain sense, because I feel like in the media and the journalist portion of me, I know we have to interview parents, interview a lot of different parties involved, and most of the time that's what they are speaking to us. But at the same time, that is not equally presented to African Americans when they are part of an incident. Like when Aaron Gardner was choked in New York, he didn't have the different fluffy headlines that happened towards him. He was just peddling something small, cigarettes on the side of the corner.
Right. Mm-hmm.
But he talked about some of his violent history, what's happened to him, instead of different things different positive aspects about him that didn't get placed on him versus a shooting that would happen to a Caucasian male or woman. And that's just something that stereotypes people want to gloss over and not realize that, of course, something that actually happens is something that we deal with. And also that made me think about with stereotypes that happen with this community. Most of the time, if I'm seeing African Americans within the community, for me, and my job as the sports editor, I mostly see black athletes or the parents of those athletes, and that's who I see predominantly, and it just comes with my job. But realistically, I mean, that's the most of the time when I see African Americans in this community. And I bring that up, it also makes me think about the Laura Ingraham situation, the Fox News host who told LeBron James, one of the most influential athletes I think of this time, basically at the end of her rant, just told LeBron to shut up and dribble. And some of these athletes that I talk to, I mean, I can think of many like Shakur Houston, who won NJCAA Player of the Year last year. He was a phenomenal guy, smart kid. I mean, just a high basketball IQ. I enjoy covering J.J. Ryan. I think he's a great guy. And even some of the women players, like Kyrie Rogers from last year, I think those are smart players, and I think they are more than athletes. They're people as well who don't have to, shut up and dribble. So when you hear someone like Laura Ingraham tell LeBron to shut up and dribble, I guess what's something that people won't see, I guess how that can mentally affect someone, like mentally affect a black person. Because I feel like everyone is not told to shut up and dribble, because those same hosts have brought in people like Dog the Bounty Hunter and Maury, people who they don't have any really political aspirations. So why should they be ones, on the camera speaking of political things that regarding Trump or some of these shootings and different things like that? So why tell LeBron to shut up and dribble? But yet you don't tell these other people as well the same thing. So just kind of talk about the mental aspect that can have on an African American when you tell them to shut up and dribble, where we know we're more than athletes, we're more than what we do.
Yeah, I think it's a situation where that you don't have sense enough to talk about anything. You're an athlete, and your job is to go out there and entertain us, right. Shoot baskets, and do those things that we want to see you do that are non-threatening, non-confrontational, those kinds of things, see. And when and it just lets you know that you're supposed that there's a certain place that you're relegated to in as far as they're concerned, and that is to entertain me. But you're not supposed to have any opinion, right. Or any idea about anything other than just that. We're paying you to play basketball, so that's all we want to see or hear from you. And so that has a tendency to work on a person's mind, because here you've got the same. You're living in the same community. You're exposed to the same kinds of rules, policies, and things that go on for everybody else, but you're not supposed to have an opinion about it, see? And so it's just like me, I've got a job and I work every day, but I can't have an opinion about politics or about policies and things that go on in my community where I'm expected to abide by, you know. I support it with the tax base by paying my taxes, and et cetera. I'm required to do everything everybody else is required to do, but for that one thing, I'm supposed to be quiet and, you know, accept what goes on, you know.
Right.
So it's taxing on you. It's, you know, when you get to thinking about it, I think about that, you know, and I think that's what I think about all the time. Now, if I was you know, being excused, you know, to meet some of the obligations everybody else has to meet, well, then I wouldn't have much to say. But when I have to meet all the other requirements, the same requirements that everybody else does in terms of a law-abiding, you know, citizen, I think that I ought to have some of the same opportunity or the same right to express myself and my concerns about what goes on.
Again, with me today I have Darrell Pope, the Hutchinson president of the NAACP. One thing I don't want it to slip my mind, but speaking about some of these stereotypes and when black athletes speak out, not even just like with LeBron James, but also Colin Kaepernick, who went on to protest, and I do personally believe that he was blackballed from the NFL because of his stance. But they made me think about coaches, I guess in perspective of sports, like with Steve Kerr from the Golden State Warriors, Greg Popovich, or even Eminem, the rapper to a lesser extent. When they come out and speak about, you know, certain political things or racial things that happen in America, it's not attacked the same way that Kaepernick would be, or LeBron has, or Kevin Durant, or even some of these black athletes. It's not attacked the same way from when they say something. And I somewhat conflict with that because in the same time, you know, I do see, you know, I guess a white American is also my brother and sister in the sense that I do want this equal, not even equal, just to be a decent human. Like, to me, it's that simple, to be a decent human. I feel like we all can be together, but I feel like at the same time, you should also realize what and how these racial things affect us. And I bring it up because, like I said, when Steve Kerr or Greg Popovich, they're not attacked in the same way LeBron James or Kevin Durant or Colin Kaepernick would be. But at the same time, I know that we need certain white allies because I'm somewhat troubled with that. Even though I know we need these white allies to help further the cause, in a sense, I still feel like personally that drowns out our voice because we've been speaking about this for a long time, and knowing that we still need someone that's not of our color to help us push this out is somewhat hurtful to me because this is something that we've been screaming, something that we've been trying to push out and show that like this is just angers us, this frustrates us, this saddens us in so many different ways. But at the same time, like we need you to help push that for us, and that's a personal struggle that I have because I know we all need each other to help, you know, bring about positive change. And I'm not gonna lie and say I feel like things are worse. I feel like things have gotten better, but I feel like with Trump is in office, or even just before Trump has been in office, I feel like it's been so many different things, like with the shootings that happen towards, you know, black men and women, and people just don't see, like, they want us to come together in a sense, but it's not as equal to help us push the change that we all want to bring. I feel like we all want positive change and all want things to help us as an African American community to grow and to have fair treatment. But when it's not shown towards us, I mean, we can't be the ones that's, I guess, put in our place in a sense to say, no, you can act out this certain way. And like I said, I struggle with that in so many different ways. So I do think we all need to come together in a sense, but at the same time, and you being the NAACP president, that we want to show the impact that we can, you know, on the field, off the field, you know, in politics, in office, like any position that we can to show who we are. I mean, it's, for me, I know that I'm a black sports editor here in Hutchinson. I mean, you saw the column that I wrote. I personally feel like that wouldn't have happened to anybody else but me. I truly feel that way. It wouldn't happen to anybody else but me. And the thing, and I bring it up, I don't mind being the only black. I mean, I want to see more, you know, African Americans in writing, you know, in the media, here in Kansas and other communities as well. I don't mind being. I mean, I see great people who I enjoy speaking to all the time when I'm at the company. I mean, out in gangs, both white and black. I mean, I enjoy talking to certain families all the time, and that makes my job enjoyable. You know what I mean? But at the same time, like I would love to see more representation of me. And I don't know if that's just a Kansas thing. I mean, I've only been in Kansas since 2013. I mean, you met me when I first got here, so I haven't seen many black people here. So I don't know if that's just a Kansas thing, or it's just like you mentioned earlier. Like, I guess our voices have not been heard and we just not being visible and just bringing visibility. So at least with me, I don't mind having that responsibility of showing, like, me being visible out in the community. But it's somewhat, I don't want to say sad or disheartening. I don't want to say disheartening. I feel like that's a harsh word. But it's just, I would love to see more of me out, you know, instead of just the athlete that I see on the court, because I feel like there's more to us than, you know, what we do.
Well, it is. It's depressing, you know, to feel like that you're you know, limited in terms of opportunity. And I think that a lot of times when you talk about, you know, certain people's voices seem to have the authority, or they seem to have you know, there's something when certain people speak. Well, I mean, they get the attention and are listened to, where other people, you know, are kind of ignored and passed over. And when you talk about the coaches saying various things, you know, they're kind of considered and respected in their opinion, you know, saying, well, you know, this guy has something to say and we ought to listen to him and give him some credibility. When somebody else has something to say, well, they're just sour graping and complaining, see. And so it's kind of categorized that way, and I think that's what happens. But a lot of times it seems like that we find ways to justify denying the same right or opportunity as someone else. You know, we try to find all these ways, like you were talking about Eric Garner a while ago. You know, what they do is he was mistreated. You know, in fact he was murdered, in my opinion. And what happened is that they try to justify him deserving this by coming up with some kind of a dark past. You know, where that if someone else, they come out, they want to talk about, well, you know, they had, you know, mental issues, you know, and that they, you know, had psychological situations and he needs to be, and that sort of thing. I see. So they try to find a way to justify one while they villainize the other, you know. And that's the issue or the problem that I have about a lot of the things that have to do with race, you know, that affect racial situations. It seems like we find a way to justify mistreating one while we find a way to try to find a way to sympathize with the other.
And then I guess someone ended off on a positive note. I'll go back to Hudson Harmony. I guess when I go back to that, when people hear Hudson Harmony, I guess what's the main focus you'll want people to take away from this when it's happened Tuesday? Because you'll be there, of course, on Tuesday, correct? So yes. What's one of the main things that you would want someone to take away once they come and leave Hudson Harmony? Well,
one of the things we want them to take away is if we come together, that we're not all that much different, you know. We all have the same wants and desires out of life. You know, we want security. We want someone to love. We want somebody to you know, to respect and so forth. We want to be comfortable in our lifestyle. And what we want them to realize is that when we come together and reason like individuals, mature individuals, you know, that we have the same wants and desires, and they can be accomplished if we work together instead of, you know, polarizing ourselves, you know, having a dividing line. You know, you're on that side and I'm on this side. But when we come together and meld our ideas and conversations and thoughts and so forth, that we can have a community that you know, a harmonious community with unity and be progressive about the kind of things that we want to do as a community. As a total community, and not just two separate sides or three separate sides or whatever.
Well, thank you again for Darrell. I appreciate you for coming in today. I really appreciate it. Again, guys, it's Darrell Pope, the Hutchinson president of the NAACP, and I'm Kelton Brooks, sports editor with the Hutchinson News. Thank you, Darrell.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
I'm sure he's probably still going.